Good morning, everybody. It is, I don't know, April 27th on a Monday, and here I am. Um, Today, I'm going to talk to you guys about change and the brain. So, a lot of us, including myself, are feeling exhausted and we're feeling tired. And our brains are, I mean, not only are we going through a lot with COVID, but our brains are as well. Oh my gosh, these are like the dirtiest glasses on the planet. It's like, I can't see anything. And so what is happening is, unless you are like over 90 and have experienced the Great Depression and World War II, our brains are literally have never experienced anything like what we're experiencing right now during COVID. And so what's happening is that I have a great friend and colleague, and she is a neuroscientist, and she was talking to like her mentor, who's like this Harvard neuroscientist. And so I'd say that's pretty legit. Apparently, what is happening is that because we have never experienced a global pandemic before in our lives, our brain is literally creating new neural pathways, which is, I mean, I'm dorking out. I think this is like super cool. Oops, sorry, I'm touching something on my screen. I don't know what it's touching. And so basically, like, our brain is like a filing system, right? So if we have, I mean, it's probably more like a computer, but since I'm 48, I'm going to use a filing cabinet in analogy. And so it's like a filing system, and it likes to categorize things. And so that's how it processes. That's how we understand things. That's how we make connections. And so like if you see, like if you take a car, like that would be one file. And then within that would be the types of cars, the colors of cars, your experiences in cars, all of those things, right? And so because we don't have a global pandemic filing cabinet, our brain is working on overdrive, which is why you may be experiencing exhaustion and scattered thinking. And I mean, I know just like in my personal life, my girls were supposed to graduate 5th grade this year. And so now there's no graduation. And so we have to like compile we're doing an online slideshow essentially. And so it took like so much brain power to even try and get these pictures, do the things, and they're simple tasks. So if you are feeling overwhelmed that these simple tasks are exhausting and you just, oh my God, I can't even fathom doing this, or you're starting to do it and then all of a sudden, you know, you're like, what was I doing? Like, I am literally forgetting words. And that is because, again, our brains are working on overdrive to create new pathways so we can understand what's happening. And because this is going so fast and every like 6 or 12 hours, we're getting new information, it's again, putting our brains on overdrive. So I think that's super, super cool. And then, you know, this is all also about, you know, the brain and change and what happens with your mind when change is here. And so we have the brain doing its thing with the neural pathways. And then on the same token, our entire world just totally slowed down. And so with that combination and forcing us into global retreat, our frenemy, the ego, is popping up. And we've talked about the ego. I talked about it last week, the frenemy. How is it showing up for you? All of that stuff, right? But what happens is the ego and the conscious mind is only, hey, Jenny, oh my God, hi, it's so good to see your face or your, you know, not your face, but your name. Yes. I mean, I know I'm total scatterbrain these days and completely losing train of thought, and I'll probably lose it right now. But it is about like, so your ego, your frenemy, and your conscious mind is only 10% of your brain. Okay. And that 10% does not like change. And in fact, it fears it. Okay. So this is when the amygdala kicks in. So you have 10% of your brain is your conscious mind, and then the other 90% is your subconscious mind. And your amygdala is your like most primal part of your brain. It's the oldest part of your brain, and that's your fear center, and that's where your fight, flight, or freeze response kicks in. It's the part of your brain that constantly thinks that we're getting chased by a saber-toothed tiger. And right now, the pandemic is our saber-toothed tiger, okay? And so when we are experiencing change and the fear comes up, this is where baby steps come in and your mindset comes in. And if you've ever been a client of mine or you've been following these lives since September, you know that I am a firm believer of baby steps. Because what happens is, it's like, I always like to use a pool analogy because it's a really easy way for people to understand it. And it's what comes to mind, that if you have a pool and it's the pool of change, and then you are like, I'm going to dive in and I'm going to do all these big changes, that water is freezing cold. And what happens when you dive into a freezing cold pool is that you want to jump the fuck out of it, right? And be like, I am not going back in there, you know. And I mean, on a personal side, I'm a diver in a pool. It's torture for me to do the baby steps into a pool, but like in the brain change way, we have to do the baby steps, right? So instead of diving into the pool, we go over to the low end and we dip our toe in, we test the water, we go to the first step, we hang out there, whatever that little change is, and we hang out there for as long as we need to hang out there. And then you take the second step. And then you're on your second step. How does that feel? It's all right. It's a little scary. Okay, let's go back up to the first step and just do the one thing. So when we take these little itty bitty baby steps, the next thing we know is that we're like waist deep in that pool of change. We're still in our conscious mind, and our amygdala has not kicked in. Right? And so that is the goal, is to make these little baby steps so that your amygdala doesn't flare up and put you in lockdown or make you like fight or flight. All right. So there's also this thing called the consciousness continuum. And I'm pretty sure my colleague, who's an amazing friend of mine and great therapist, made this up, or at least riffed off of it. But it's a really good way of understanding your brain and how change works. And so she calls it the consciousness continuum. Her name is Marianne Marlowe. I want to give her credit for it. And so you have your old behaviors that are ingrained and you just have them. Like, you know, let's take smoking, right? And you just do it. You're completely unconscious that you're doing it, you know, and then one day you go, oh, you know, this is you're unconscious, you're unaware, you're just doing it, right? And the behavior is the old behavior of smoking. Then one day you go, oh, this doesn't work for me anymore. And so you're like, oh, I want to quit smoking. So then you're conscious of you're conscious of what you want to do, but the behavior is still the same. Okay. This is where the hard work comes in. Then the next phase of that continuum is, I'm going to quit smoking and I'm going to be conscious of it. And now it's the new behavior change. Again, this is the hard part of change because you're thinking about it, right? And then eventually you keep going, and then that you no longer are thinking about it and you have the new behavior. And so Another kind of ridiculous example is like I have a shoulder issue and I had to literally like think about how I move my shoulder for like months because I had to train the muscles to do something different. And it was so super frustrating because I had to think about what I was doing. So those conscious parts of when you're trying to behavior change are the hardest. And then eventually it sinks in and then you don't have to think about it. So that's how change and the brain works. It's also like driving a car. When you first started driving, you were like thinking about everything, and now you get in, you do all the things, you turn on the radio, you sometimes have highway hypnosis, which you just zone out, so that is an example of the consciousness continuum. And so like, go easy on yourself right now. Like, we are going through something that we've never ever experienced before in our life. Like the closest thing I've come to it was living in New York City during 9/11. And that was a city. I mean, it was global, but it wasn't global like this is global. And so just go easy on yourself and, give yourself time to relax. Like, I got into bed yesterday at 7 and I read a book, like an actual book with paper in it. And it was so awesome. And then I went to bed. I don't know what time I went to bed. I fell asleep at some point. And I usually set my alarm for 6 now. I set it for 10 to 8. So I just got up like an hour ago and I really needed it. And so go easy on yourself and give yourself some grace. And if you're feeling scattered, take that as a clue to just chill out a little bit and rest your mind. So know that it's like working on overdrive right now. So take good care of you guys. Take care of your brains. And I will see you next week. If you want to learn more about all of this stuff, my invitation to you is to sign up for the Soul Care 6-Pack. It is my 6-month program in 6 weeks. And I guarantee you you are going to come out at the end of the 6 weeks with some super awesome tools to live a pretty rad life, and like, not to be like, oh, you're going to be happy all the time, but like when shit hits the fan, because shit constantly hits the fan, we know that, you're going to have the tools to get through it. These are the tools that I learned over 2 decades of doing what I do. These are the tools that I learned after Jack died, and I am giving you all of the stuff to get you through life and to get you through this like totally crazy thing that we're going through. So that's my invitation to you guys. Today's the last day to sign up. The class starts next Monday at 10 a.m. And if you can't make that time, all the calls are recorded and you have access to everything. And we have a private Facebook group with a bunch of really super awesome women in there already. And some of you are in this group too. So I'm excited to see you in there. And that's it. I'm going to stop selling because I don't like selling. So I will see you next Monday, like always. And I'm going to just go about my COVID day. All right. I love you guys and take good care of yourself. Bye.